Hello, everyone. I'm Alexis Christoforous. Thanks for streaming with us. Today on ABC News Live, British Prime Minister Liz Truss has announced her resignation after just 6 weeks on the job. She faced calls to resign after her economic plan roiled financial markets, what it means for the UK and the world. The Biden administration says Vladimir Putin is resorting to desperate measures in Ukraine, instituting martial law in illegally annexed territories as he reportedly considers pulling back more forces. What comes next in the conflict? And drought has caused the Mississippi River to recede to historically low levels and could drop even more in the coming weeks. We'll break down how it could affect commerce and the climate. But we begin with the political turmoil rocking the United Kingdom. British Prime Minister Liz Truss has announced she will resign from her position.
Given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
Truss faced calls for her resignation after her economic plan caused turbulence in the financial markets. ABC's Patrick Greville joins me now live from London for more. So, Patrick, how did this come about? What does it mean for the UK moving forward?
Hi, Alexis. I mean, it's been an incredibly chaotic 24 hours here in London and in the UK. Liz Truss has now resigned after just 6 weeks, as you say, just 45 days, which makes her the shortest serving Prime Minister in British history. And she was forced out by her own party. And essentially this was, the downfall of her own making, because she went forward with this very radical tax plan that was going to be these huge tax cuts that would have mainly rewarded the wealthy. And that spooked financial markets and essentially triggered a financial crisis in the UK and forced, and actually at one point crashed the pound against the dollar, pushing it to record lows. And that meant that basically she's become extremely unpopular and toxic within the UK. Polls show her as one of the most, perhaps the most unpopular Prime Minister in British history. And the Tory party became aware that if they kept her, it would be impossible for them to win an election. And so this is very much a sort of desperate move, because they're very much aware of how bad this looks, that it looks completely chaotic, but they're doing it because they believe they have no other choice. And now, though, they're saying there's going to be a leadership election within this week. They don't say there's going to be a general election, despite calls from the opposition for there to be a general election immediately. And so for now, we apparently will have a new Prime Minister by the end of the week.
Okay, now the question is, who will that be? We're hearing reports Boris Johnson may actually throw his hat back into the ring. What do you know about that?
I mean, this would be very remarkable, but yes, there is a report in the Times of London that Boris Johnson is expected to run in the leadership election that is going to be held, and that it will be held at the end of just a week. And so it would, of course, be remarkable, because Boris Johnson was removed only in July and replaced by Liz Truss, and he was removed in some disgrace. He was removed by the party because he was extremely unpopular, because he had lied about parties that were held in Downing Street during lockdown. And so he was removed for being extremely unpopular. But now he apparently is considering, at least, running again and trying to come back as Prime Minister.
It really is a stunning turn of events. Patrick Greville, thank you. Meanwhile, Ukraine is waking up this morning to parts of that country under Russian martial law. This comes after Vladimir Putin illegally annexed areas of the sovereign nation in what international observers are calling sham referendums. Our chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell is in Kharkiv, Ukraine, with the very latest.
Russian martial law now in effect in parts of Ukraine. Putin imposing the new decree on all 4 illegally annexed regions, tightening his control over the territories and the occupied population. It gives authorities there more power to crack down, control, even mobilize the population. President Zelensky urging people to leave, warning the occupiers will try to recruit men into their army, in effect forcing Ukrainians to fight Ukrainians. Putin's military losing the ground battle for now, as units like the 92nd Brigade advance eastwards. Andrei's leading an artillery unit on the front lines, saying victory means taking back all Ukrainian land from Russia.
Everything.
And in Russia itself, Putin also ramping up the country's war footing, granting regional authorities emergency powers. The Biden administration saying Putin's resorting to desperate tactics.
Vladimir Putin finds himself in an incredibly difficult position. His only tool available to him is to brutalize individual citizens.
Alexis, this is another extraordinary move by Vladimir Putin. Even though his land war appears to be failing, it's clear he's got no intention of stopping. This latest move effectively doubling down and pulling the entire Russian nation ever closer into an all-out war effort. I think given the growing likelihood that Russia could indeed lose Kherson, there are growing fears now about how Putin is going to respond to such a significant setback. We've heard his warnings about a potential nuclear strike, but then how will America and the Allies respond? Escalation seems almost unavoidable. Alexis?
Ian Pannell, thank you. Joining me now for more on the latest in Ukraine is ABC News national security and defense analyst and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, Mick Mulroy. So, Mick, what does the Russian martial law now in effect in parts of Ukraine mean for Ukrainians in those affected areas?
So, Alexis, this is just another example of what President Putin is willing to do since he cannot turn around the ground war. His troops basically cannot fight the Ukrainian troops. They're losing. They're losing ground. They probably will lose Kherson. So they're turning toward targeting civilians, both with drones and missiles, and now basically using civilians as human shields to cover their withdrawal and potentially use them as hostages, quite frankly, since they will likely keep many of these civilians against their will around their positions. And, of course, also forced conscription to fight other Ukrainians. So they're all violations of international law and human rights.
So the Biden administration has said that Putin is resorting to desperate tactics here. So what could we see come next from Putin after this martial law decree?
So certainly all the things I just mentioned, which are against the law of armed conflict and human rights violation. But the biggest concern, if that wasn't enough, is that that still doesn't work. So he has very limited options past that. And one of them would be this tactical low-yield nuclear weapon, potentially just to try to scare the Ukrainians into some kind of concession. That, of course, would draw on the United States, I believe, and other NATO, if not the entirety of NATO, to respond directly. So let's hope, really hope, that he does not go that way, but that's the biggest concern and the most dangerous course of action that he could take.
Absolutely. So Secretary of State Antony Blinken told our George Stephanopoulos that so far we have seen no interest from Putin to engage in diplomacy. So what does that mean for the future of this war?
Well, it's not good. We should always try to have discussions and have diplomacy if it can lead to the end of this horrific war. If President Putin's not even willing to talk, then it's impossible for us to do so. He will have to be backed into a corner of which he thinks he can talk his way out of, at least some concession that he can claim to the Russian people he had some sort of victory. I just don't see it. It's very clear the Ukrainians are going to fight until they take all their territory back, and that NATO and the United States will be with them in that. So it's very difficult to see how this would end, unfortunately.
And more, he's losing the support of his own people in Russia. Mick Mulroy, thank you.
Thanks, Alexis.
We are less than 3 weeks out from Election Day, and voters are faced with several key issues, including abortion, as they head to the polls. And on that issue, President Biden earlier this week made a pledge if Democrats can pick up enough seats in the midterms.
I want you to remember that the final say does not rest in the court now. It does not rest with extremist Republicans in Congress. And finally say about your right to choose that it rests with you. And if you do your part and vote, Democratic leaders in Congress, I promise you, will do our part. I'll do my part. And with your support, I'll sign a law codifying Roe in January.
I want to bring in ABC News senior national policy reporter Ann Flaherty for more on this. So, Ann, given the Democrats have to hold the House and pick up 2 Senate seats to keep control, how will the midterms define where this country stands on such a hot topic?
Well, you know, I think the midterms are intended to take sort of the temperature of the American people in the middle of his presidency, and abortion is not the only issue, and it's certainly not top of mind. We have seen polling that suggests younger women are putting abortion at the top of their list, but those aren't always the voters that show up at the polls. Voters oftentimes tend to be older, and they're talking about things like inflation, the economy, and crime. So, you know, where this goes, I don't think it's going to be a referendum on abortion, and Biden, as we've talked about before, has a very uphill climb to try to keep the House, flip those seats in the Senate. I don't think that this is an election that is a referendum on abortion.
So, Ann, Kentucky has already enforced a trigger law that came into effect immediately after the Supreme Court overturned Roe. Could we see a change on Election Day and regain abortion rights in that state, do you think?
So this is a very interesting state to watch. One of 5 states that have put abortion on the ballot. Deep red state. We know that conservatives have campaigned against abortion rights, but we don't necessarily know how Kentucky is going to come down on this. They have a ban in place, as you mentioned, that does not include exceptions for rape and incest. So this is one of the more extreme bans that we've seen across the country. I think this is going to be a real test. And for Republicans, I think they're going to be watching this state. If voters show up and say, look, I'm ready to support a Republican in the election, but I'm going to vote against abortion or in favor of abortion rights in this ballot, I think that's going to be a warning shot to a lot of Republicans looking ahead to 2024.
And turning to another state, California, they have a question on the ballot that would write abortion protections into the state constitution. As of right now, where are we seeing that lean ahead of Election Day?
Yeah, California, very liberal state. I don't think there's any doubt that this will fall on the side of abortion rights. That is expected to be supportive of restoring the protections that we saw under Roe. But I think that the Democrats there are making a point. They want to expand abortion access, and they don't want to. They might know that they're going to win, but they want to win by a big margin. So we do see Democrats still pouring money into that state. That is something that they absolutely want to make a point on, that they are here to expand abortion rights because they see that as winning with their voters.
All right, Ann Flaherty, thanks as always.
Thanks.
Coming up, Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is speaking out publicly for the first time since he suffered a concussion. What he has to say next. Welcome back. Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is speaking out publicly for the first time since he suffered a concussion that caused the NFL to re-examine their protocols as he prepares to take the field again. TJ Holmes has the latest.
I'm just really excited that I can prepare and, play.
He's back, he's ready to play, and we are hearing this morning for the first time from Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa about that hit that left him with a severe concussion.
At the time, I was unconscious, so I couldn't, really tell what was going on. When I did come to and kind of realize what was going on, I was just wondering what happened.
The 24-year-old says he doesn't remember much of that night when a Cincinnati Bengals defender threw him to the turf. You can see his hands and fingers seize up, widely known as fencing, a sign of neurological trauma.
Uh-oh. I remember the entire night up to the point where I got tackled. But after I got tackled, I don't remember much from there. Getting carted off, I don't remember that.
Just days before, the third-year quarterback seemed to suffer what many thought was a head injury. Tagovailoa seen stumbling after taking a hit against the Buffalo Bills. The NFL faced immediate backlash over not placing Tagovailoa into concussion protocols sooner. The NFL and Players Association quickly launched an investigation determining that Tagovailoa's tumble on the field was not neurologically caused. The NFLPA ultimately fired the medical official that cleared him, saying several mistakes were made. Just this month, the NFL and Players Association adjusted the concussion protocols to improve the health and safety of players, swapping out their check-the-box process for a standardized approach to concussion evaluation where competitive decisions never usurp quality care.
We've already seen more players in the last couple of weeks removed from games than maybe we would have prior to the language change. So I do think that the process is designed to be conservative and err on the side of the safety of the player.
And our thanks to TJ Holmes for that report. Now to the urgent search for a missing Princeton student. The 20-year-old Ivy League junior vanished last week. Trevor Ault is in Princeton, New Jersey with more.
The search for missing Princeton University student Miss Racha Onete is intensifying.
Every second, every minute really matters.
The Ivy League university saying Wednesday they increased law enforcement presence on and around campus using a helicopter, drones, and a watercraft to aid in the search. According to Ms. Roch's family, she spent Thursday night volunteering at an event with the Princeton Terrace Club, a social eating club. She checked into her dorm around 3 a.m. Friday. One of her suitemates said she saw Ms. Roch brushing her teeth and go to her room, but when Ms. Roch's roommate got to their room around 4:30 a.m., she wasn't there. Ms. Roch was supposed to have an interview off campus regarding her U.S. citizenship application that weekend, but her family became alarmed when they heard she was a no-show. Ms. Roch's phone last pinged a location near an off-campus residence over a 30-minute walk away from her dorm. Overnight, her brother Universe telling ABC News the movements seem very out of character.
It's pretty far away, and Princeton is a big campus and it's very insular, right? So it's very odd that her phone would be off campus. Everything is on campus.
Back in 2020, our Cleveland affiliate Channel 5 got to know Ms. Roch, an honors graduate, during a story on a program helping scholars achieve their college dreams.
Taking classes at a college level in the summer really helped me feel comfortable knowing that I could handle the course load.
Her family's now urging anyone with any information to come forward.
We can take any help we can find. And we just want the law to be faster because time is of essence.
Ms. Roch's brother is now here in New Jersey trying to help find his sister however he can, and the university says they're working with law enforcement to follow any and all leads. They're urging anybody who might have any information at all to come forward. Alexis.
Trevor Alt, thank you. And on a programming note, Impact by Nightline has an incredible episode streaming right now that features groundbreaking reporting about child labor in Mexico on behalf of fair trade companies in the U.S. Let's take a sneak peek at this in-depth investigation.
It's just past 4 a.m. on a jungle road in southern Mexico known as La Ruta del Café, the coffee route. Rising into the highlands of Chiapas, this road is lined with ethically certified coffee farms. And yet we've come to investigate reports of human rights abuses on these remote mountainsides.
We've been investigating a farm where we've been told children are working in the fields.
David, I've got to tell you that if we are to expose the fact that children are picking coffee, this puts them out of business. So we're in a little bit of danger here.
All right, we've arrived. This behind me is the farm of interest today. Quite soon, the day will begin here and workers will start arriving.
You can catch the full investigation on Impact by Nightline streaming on Hulu right now. Coming up, a new warning for parents about fentanyl disguised as candy. What you need to know in 2 minutes. Welcome back to ABC News Live. A new warning today for parents about fentanyl disguised as candy. Investigators say a suspect tried going through screening at LAX with bags of what appeared to be sweet tarts, Skittles, and Whoppers. Instead, they found 12,000 fentanyl pills. The suspect took off running, but has now been identified. Officials say that if parents find suspicious candy, they should not touch it and call law enforcement immediately. A popular pasta maker is facing a lawsuit for misleading consumers. Barilla advertises as Italy's #1 brand of pasta. Trouble is, their products are not made in Italy. They're made in Iowa and New York. This week, a federal judge denied the company's motion to dismiss the lawsuit. And NASA released an image of newly formed stars from the James Webb Space Telescope. Get a load of these images. They captured nascent, bright red stars within a billowing cloud of gas and dust known as the Pillars of Creation. The protostars are estimated to be just a few 100,000 years old. pretty incredible. Well, the Mississippi River, this is also incredible, has hit historic low levels due to the current drought the country is facing. The unusually low water levels of the river have caused barges to get stuck in mud and sand. It's also triggered waterway restrictions from the Coast Guard. Water levels are projected to drop even further in the coming weeks as well, hurting the region's economic activity and potentially threatening jobs. Joining me now for more on this is ABC News Chief Meteorologist Ginger Zee. Ginger, always good to see you.
Great to be here.
So this troubling news here at the Mississippi River, if it continues to decline in water level, what are the short-term and long-term impacts for our country?
I think as soon as we started seeing the water levels approaching historic lows, all of us, at least in the weather and climate departments here, started raising our eyebrows, because this is something we've only seen, you know, in records that go back to the 1890s, really twice before. 1988 and 2012 are both memorable years for when the Mississippi was so low. The impacts are vast. It's not just to the economy of the region. The man that I talked to, who runs one of the bigger shipping companies, he told me that when they can't run, which they're having trouble running, America can't run. Because think about what goes up and down the Mississippi River. It's everything from coal and plastic, oil, grains, steel. Some of the most important exports that this country creates cannot get downriver, or they're getting downriver and much less so. So the pictures you're seeing there are of boats that are barely able to get through. They're having to lighten their load by up to 50%. So they're just leaving big piles of soybeans and corn on the side. I mean, it is harvest time, and harvest was going well and is going well, but if you can't get that grain anywhere after you pick it, there's no point. And so right now there are just big piles covered with tarps waiting until we get some water in the Mississippi River. And right now I know the Army Corps of Engineers has been dredging, and I have a call into them to see what's next. Can we do anything else?
Right. Is there any relief in sight, any rain coming to this region?
Well, that's the thing, is we're in severe drought, and I think you probably saw some of the drought monitors. It's almost every state. And when you're looking at something like Wisconsin to Iowa down to Mississippi with a lot of red and orange, look at Arkansas there, and that's why Memphis is one of those low spots where we've seen record lows. You really want moisture. Well, this is the November through January outlook for precipitation. Drought worsening for a majority of that area. Unfortunately, you also need a lot. This isn't just, ooh, we got a couple of inches of rain and the Mississippi filled. It is a giant and vast body of water that needs to be not depleted, but added to from north to south. You need a lot of snow this winter that's going to have to melt in the right places, and you're going to need big change. This isn't something that ends tomorrow, even if we had an inundating rainstorm.
Speaking of this winter, since we have you here, I want to ask you, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration just published the U.S. temperature and precipitation outlook for the winter. What do you think we're in store for?
Right. So this is the thing, is we are going into something called a triple dip La Nina, something we've only ever done 2 other times in the history of us studying how the temperatures of the Pacific Ocean influence our weather patterns. La Nina typically means that you'd have a warmer south, drier as well, which nobody needs down there, and that you'd have kind of average in the northeast and just a little bit more cool and rain, snow up in the northern plains and Great Lakes. And it looks like the outlook fits a very typical La Nina. So the La Nina pattern here would take Seattle and Portland, who have been baking hot, by the way, and give them a above average precipitation, which would be nice there. Not what they want to hear in Southern California or Nevada. Colorado, where that Colorado River has been so low because no snow the last couple of years in the other La Ninas.
Right.
Remember, Lake Mead and Lake Powell all fed by that. That would be horrible for them. The Southeast and even Florida, who's just been baking for a couple of years, looks like another warmer than average place. So the Great Lakes into the kind of interior Northeast could end up seeing a little bit more snow and rain and perhaps slightly cooler than average.
All right, triple dip La Nina. Ginger Zee, thanks for making sense of it all.
Of course.
Appreciate it. And I'm Alexis Christoforous. Stay with us here. ABC News Live continues with more news, context, and analysis.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.